Welcome to the MPC Academy. Today we're going to take a look at the MPCe pads and the matrix. Let's get to it. So I have a brand new project loaded up, and with that project, it loaded up a trap kit. So what I'm going to do is make a brand new drum track, and we're going to use some of those samples. So now I'll hit the edit button, and I can edit the drum program itself. So with pad 08 right here, we're going to go to samples, and we're going to set this up. We're going to use one of these hi-hat sounds. Okay. So basic hi-hat sound with no articulations in there yet. If we go to the effects section and then we press effects again, we get into this page that offers articulations and additional effects. Because these are the new MPCe pads, we're going to be using the articulations. So we're going to turn on MPCe, and now we can adjust articulations for each quadrant in this pad. So this is the first quadrant, as you can see right there, second quadrant, third, and fourth. Now, since it's a hi-hat, a good way of doing this would be to set the first quadrant as the basic sound. So we're not going to change this. We're going to leave that right there. Second quadrant, though, could be something like a repeat. So we're going to go into the articulations, and we have a lot of options right here. We're going to go to note repeats initially, and we're going to go to 8. Now, if we tap and hold, you can immediately start to hear eighth notes being triggered as if we were using the note repeat button. But now we can go. Now, if you have headphones on, you will hear that this is going stereo back and forth. You can adjust the stereo right here, and now it's just going to be dead in the middle. So depending on the articulation, you can adjust how much stereo you want. There's also dynamics and speed. Speed will adjust accordingly to the sound. So for instance, we can go 25%, and now you can hear it's significantly slower. And also we can go all up to 400%, which is going to be much faster. And even further, you have a speed scale. So you can actually cut this timing in half, like so, or double it in speed. So technically the 400% speed right here can actually be 800% with this time too. So moving on, we have eighth note repeat on the bottom right quadrant. If we go to the upper left, we should do some sort of flam or some sort of pitch roll maybe. So let's go pitch rolls. We can see a basic roll drop, -5, -8, -12. Now what these are is just the tone being shifted down at -5. -8, -12, -15. If you go further down, you'll see ones that actually roll the pitch. So for instance, let's go basic roll chromatic descent. Maybe we want that faster, right? Let's double the speed. So you'd be like, let's add a fourth articulation. Let's look at standard rudiments. Radamacue. So we can go. Already from one sample, way more interesting performance potential from a single pad. This is the power of the MPCe technology. Let's do something a bit more advanced now. So if you page over, you will see the mod matrix on the last page. This offers a ton of powerful control that you could do. Just as a quick example for the hi-hats right here, let's actually go back over to amplitude page, click it one more time, and then you have the filter page. Right now there's no filter, so we're gonna change this to Model 2, one of my favorite filters. And then just so you can hear, the filter is being activated right there. Now, just as a demonstration for the mod matrix itself, let's put an LFO into that filter. So the hi-hat frequencies are always kind of getting shaved a little bit here and there. So we'll go source, we'll go LFO, LFO1, and then the target is going to be the filter, and we want the filter cutoff, okay? Now let's go over the LFO page because we want to slow this down and make it very, very subtle. So it's a nice slow LFO. In fact, we could even go a bit further. Let's go sample and hold. Now, if you play this right now, it's not going to do anything. And the reason is the amount is at 100%. And what we're trying to do is drop the filter. So what we have to do is bring down the amount. We'll bring it to 0, and then we'll slowly bring it in, okay? So I'm going to play the second articulation with the note repeat, which sounds like this. And then if I start introducing the LFO, let's actually change around the LFO. Let's increase the speed. So we're getting a bit more randomness right there. So with the power of the mod matrix, we just added a little bit of character into this hi-hat, which is one sound with multiple articulations and the filter being used to create some variations. The MPCe pads go even further though, but to show this next example, we need some samples. So I'm going to load up a plugin. I'm going to turn on the notes mode and I'm going to go to chords, and we are going to make let's go minor, a natural minor chord. So I'm going to click sounds, and I'm going to look for some pads I want to use, because what we're going to do is make something that shifts in and out of tones. on one single pad. So I'm going to use Jura. We're going to go to synth sounds and let's see what power oscillators sound like. Go an octave lower. This one sounds great. Now, if I click over on the arrangement page, I'm going to click the pencil icon right here, and I'm going to bounce it to a sample, like so. Say bounce. Now here's what we're going to do. We're going to switch up the sound 3 more times, so we have 4 samples total, and then we're going to turn that into a pad on that same drum track. So we need some different pad sounds. So we'll hit the sounds button again. This time let's go into MIDI. We'll go motion for this one. How does it sound? This is a good one right here. Same thing, we'll go over to the arrangement and then we'll hit the pencil and then bounce to sample. If you go to sample edit, you should see that we have 2 of these now. So first one, second one. Okay, repeat the process. Angel chords, let's use that. Maybe OPX4 for this last one. This one works. Bounce the sample. So we have 4 samples. And they're all C minor 7 as well. So let's go back to our drum program that we have. We're going to go edit and we will put this on pad 12. Okay. So let's go back over to the global side. In order to set this up correctly, we do have to change the layer play setting. So if you go into here and you look at crossfade, this is a new thing that's been added with these MPCe pads, and they allow you to configure options for how these quadrants work. If you look at this, you have A, B, C, D. And what these are is in relation to how the samples are going to play per layer. So if you look at this, you'll see 1, 2, 3, 4, essentially corresponding to the quadrants for the MPCe pads. If you go to B, you'll have sample 1 and 5 on here, sample 2 and 6 on here, etc., etc. And then C, it has all 8 samples spread all the way across. And then D, I believe, goes sample 1 on the left all the way to sample 8 on the right, depending on the X value. So we're going to put this in A mode for the crossfade. We're going to go over to samples, and on layer 1, we are going to find our plugin. Here we go. So bounce plugin 01. We're also going to put on pad loop as well. Now layer 2, bounce plugin 2. Layer 3, bounce plugin 3. Layer 4, bounce plugin 4. Now in order to make a loop, we need to change the sample play from 1 shot to note on. So if we press the pad, it's on, pick it up, it turns off. Also, if we hold it, it will loop, even though you're gonna hear the cut like that. That's okay for now though. Now at this point, you'll notice we're not getting any change in sample if we move our finger or try out different quadrants. And that's because we need to use the matrix. So let's go back into the matrix. So in the first spot of the modulation matrix, we need to go and add an MPCe source, and we'll choose pad X. And then we'll go to the target and we'll say global and layer crossfade X. Okay, so the X pad now properly fades into the other sample. Now let's do that to the Y axis. So we'll go MPCe, pad Y, and then destination is going to be global, layer crossfade Y. So now, so with pad X and pad Y, it knows where your finger is landing on the pad. So it'll probably choose the sample that you're actually playing. So just like that, with pretty minimal effort, I have 4 samples that are blending with each other on one pad. Now obviously there's no effects, so if we want to take it a bit further, there's a couple things we could do first. Go into the amplitude. Let's put on the release and maybe even add a little bit of attack. Also, let's turn down the amplitude modulation because we want most of the volume to come on. A little bit more release. Maybe a little less. Now for reverb and delay, we have a couple options. We could actually go into the effects section for the actual pad, or we could make a global effects to the actual drum track itself. The only problem with that is the actual hats would get the reverb as well, and we might not want that. So let's actually add some reverb and delay inside the pad itself, okay? So first off, we will take a delay. Air Delay Pro, one of my faves. We'll turn down the feedback a bit, modulation a bit. Already getting dreamy, but we can go a bit further. Let's open up the new Air Reverb Pro that has come with the MPC Live III. Open this guy up. Let's crank up the room size. We're going to drop the mix down. Bring up the decay to about half. Just like that, we are cooking a sonic landscape into the pads. Now you might be wondering, how do you make it so each quadrant of a pad has a distinct sample and doesn't blend with another sample? I'm going to show you that as well. So first off, let's get a bass sound. So I'm going to go back to my plugin here. I'm going to put my notes mode back to notes, and we're going to load up a bass sound. Let's go to Fabric XL. Pick bass fuzz. I think I'm going to stick with that one. So let's record this. I'm also going to throw a little air tube drive on there and a soft clipper as well. Yeah, it's got a bit of a bite now. So same thing. We are going to bounce this to a sample. I probably should have named it bass so it wasn't confusing, but it's still plugin 001 at the moment. So I think it's going to be plugin 005 at this point in the sample edit. Yeah, plugin 005. It's okay though. You get the idea, right? So let's go back to our drum program. We're going to edit this. We're going to put our bass notes onto pad 11 right here. Now we know that we used a C note for recording, so we can use that for calculating some sample differences here. Same thing here. We're going to put crossfade. We'll stick with A, so we have 4 sample options right here. And we're also going to put sample play to note on. And now for the samples, layer 1, we are just putting in the bass. We're going to do that for each layer. Just use the same exact sample. Okay, now since we have 4 quadrants, we could technically set up 4 notes. All right, so C will be the bottom left. Bottom right is going to be F, so that would be 5 semitones up. And as you can see, it says F key. Upper left, maybe we'll make A, and it's going to go under. Yeah. And then upper right, I think we'll make E. So in order to use these, we need to go back over to the mod matrix and set up the same thing that we had here. So MPCe, pad X, destination, global, crossfade X. And then do the same thing for the Y-axis. Now the problem with this is it's going to blend, right? I mean, that actually sounds pretty cool, but that's not what we want. I'm also going to take down some of the amplitude here and increase the release just a touch. Yeah. So how do we get distinct samples? What we have to do is use a shaper. So right now the shaper is in linear. If we go to quantize 0050 on both of these, what this is effectively doing is reducing it to 2 values. So we either have this side or this side, or up here. And that is how you trigger individual samples with the MPCe pads. Now this mod matrix goes extremely deep, and there's some powerful things you can do either across the entire drum program itself or individual pads. To give just a bit more of a taste, let's go back into these pads right here. We're going to use some MIDI information here. We'll do poly aftertouch. And this is going to affect the filter, which we need to turn on. So let's go to amplitude and then the filter. Once again, my favorite filter, Model 2. Back over to the mod matrix. Now again, this is not going to do anything right now because it's positive. That filter needs to be closed, which means that we need to bring this down. So we can change the samples and then push in to cut off some of the high end. Now we could actually reverse this if you prefer. So let's actually put this all the way back up to 100 and then go over to the filter. And let's bring this filter all the way down. So now if we push into the pad, the filter starts opening up. It's a little much though, so what we should do is bring this down to say maybe 30 or so. Go back into the filter. Maybe open this up just a touch more. Yeah. So that's one option right there. Something I haven't mentioned yet is the direction and the min-max values right here, and also via source. So direction is just whether or not it's going to be bipolar. So initially these values go from 0 to 100, but if I press the direction, turn it into a plus minus, then the values will go below 0 as well. So you can get negative values, like say for an LFO. The min-max is also useful because sometimes you don't want it to go below a certain value. And then the via source is really powerful as well because this allows you to tie things in together. So for instance, let's say I tie LFO1 into the poly aftertouch. So now the poly aftertouch is only triggering to the cutoff when the LFO is being activated right there. So, which is all the time at this point, but I can actually turn this all the way down and see now it's not happening at all. But if I start bringing it up, the LFO is triggering it and allowing for that to happen. But if I just slightly press, you're not really getting any of that LFO activation. But I push in, the LFO starts bringing in, you start getting that wash. Really powerful stuff. You can also tie this in with a modulation wheel. So for instance, this touch strip, right now it's in touch effects mode, but if I hold the touch strip and I go to the mod wheel right here, this will effectively act like a mod wheel. So we could switch this over to the mod wheel for a quick example. We'll go to the MIDI side and then say mod wheel, and then so now the finger pressure is only going to activate when the mod wheel is up, as you can hear. So that's one way of doing it right there. Let's actually put the LFO back on because I think that sounded more interesting personally. One thing that I like to do is adjust LFO rates with the modulation wheel. So easily doable in this mod matrix. What we can do is go source. We're going to say the mod wheel is going to be the source for this because as we bring up the modulation wheel, we're going to want to increase the LFO rate of LFO1. Our destination is going to be LFO1 speed, like so. So now, it's a little much though, so let's turn down the amount so it's not like crazy. Let's try half first. So now if I just barely press the pad, I'm only getting a little bit of that modulation. But if I press in, you really start to notice it. We need like a little beat. Put in the bass now. That's the MPC pads and the matrix.